Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. I am particularly jubilant today for a number of reasons. For one, 79 degrees here, and I love sun and I love warmth, so that helps. But a number of things. I've just completed the third month on my plan ever since both my daughter and Dave challenged me and said, dude, you need to lose 80 pounds. And this third month, I lost 5.8 pounds. So it was 10 in month 1, 5 in month 2, 5.8 in month 3. That's now 20.8. Now I still have 59.2 to go, which is a big number, but it's not as big as 80. So I'm really encouraged. It was harder this month. I'm not going to lie. It really was. I felt more temptation to go back to my unhealthy treats that I really enjoy, like French fries and burgers and candy. And I definitely indulged more. But that's the nice thing I like about the Lose It app. Like, I have the liberty to eat anything I want. I just have to watch my calories. I entered everything now. I believe it's 94 days, I think, in a row, 96 maybe. And I just watch it. Now, I gave myself a treat day because I'm allowed 15 of them. And the last time I had a treat day, I had 2,700 calories when I'm allowed 2,300. This time it was like the equivalent of getting drunk with food. Like, I just indulged and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to eat anything. But that's okay because I'm monitoring it the rest of the time. And the big difference is exercise. I've incorporated exercise. My number one exercise is gardening. Never would have thought I would be a gardener, but I've become a gardener. We have like 22 crepe myrtles and another 12 hydrangeas and 12 hibiscuses and 10 to 12 roses out there. And then we just ordered these bulbs from Color Blends in the Netherlands. We have a landscape architect who's giving us some guidance. So I have 400 tulips and 75 daffodils. And we're putting in some lantanas and verbenas. And so I'm out there, I'm pruning, I'm fertilizing, I'm changing the soil, I'm digging holes in Georgia's clay with a pickaxe. So I'm really getting exercise and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you for your support. I had a really encouraging story this week. I talked to a listener from the West Coast. And she said she was so inspired by the story I shared that she immediately committed to do the same thing. And she's down 10.6 pounds in the first 2 months, entering every morsel into the app. So hopefully I'm inspiring somebody else who needs to make this commitment. When you think about it, you get to feel better, look better, and be better in terms of healthier. Like, any one of those should make it worth it, but all three. So I'm committed to doing this. And quite honestly, I'm trying to make more of a lifestyle change than do something drastic. So I'm happy if I lose 5 pounds a month because to me, that's sustainable. And when I get down to 20 to go, I'll be probably happy if I lose 3 or 4 a month. All right, enough about that. There's other reasons why I'm jubilant today. I'm going to do this panoramic overview of colleges. And the purpose is to look at when an area of the country is known for something. Oftentimes, colleges will be extremely strong in that area. And so I'm doing something different I haven't done before. I enjoyed my preparation. I think you're going to enjoy it as well. And then the last reason is this brand new interview that, and I know you guys hear me say this a lot, but I really mean this. This is one of the best interviews we've had on Your College Bound Kid. Lisa does an interview with Dr. Andrea Brenner. She's the founder of Doing College and college card games and many other things you'll hear about. But let me tell you a little background. So we had Elliot Felix on the podcast. We've been giving his book away. And I talked to Elliot on multiple occasions, and 3 different times he said, Mark, you need to have Andrea Brenner on your podcast. You just do. And so I finally said, you know what? Let me go. I'm sure she's on YouTube. So I went on YouTube. I listened to one of her presentations, and I said, Lisa, we got to do this interview. And Lisa, of course, has been great at doing all these interviews on anything to do with excelling and success in college. But in my opinion, unequivocally, we have never had an interview that will help a parent know how they can be preparing their student for success in college now that is as effective as this interview. In fact, I'm going to ask you guys to do something I've never asked you to do before. I'm going to ask you to take notes, especially if you have a senior. If you've got a sophomore or junior, still would be beneficial. If you've got a middle schooler or a 9th grader, it still would be beneficial to take notes, but especially if you have a senior. And that's a big request because I know myself, I'm listening to podcasts while I'm out gardening, I'm listening while I'm driving, I'm listening while I'm multitasking. That's what makes podcasts so special. We have to take notes. Now it becomes this solitary event, almost like TV watching, where it's all consuming. But Dr. Brenner just packs so much content into every sentence that she speaks that I don't want you to miss it. And I just think it's outstanding. I was originally going to run it over 3 weeks, but it's just so power-packed with content, I decided to run it for the whole entire month of November. It's just so much wisdom about what we as parents can do to prepare our kids to be successful in college. I've got a lot more I'm going to say about this interview, but I'll be doing detailed previews before each of the 4 parts. This is they say must see TV. This is must listen to podcast content. There we go. All right. But before we get to that, I want to dive into the topic for today. And why am I doing this topic? Well, it can be a way that a family or a student can identify a good college in an area of interest. What am I referring to? You take a look at the part of the country that is known for something. And most of the time, the colleges in that area are going to be exemplary in that thing that they're known for. Why is that? It's just too competitive out there not to be. We talk a lot about how selective college admissions is, and it certainly has become ridiculously selective for 50 to 75 colleges, and even more for certain programs in certain colleges. Other colleges that may not be in the 50 to 75 hardest schools to get into. And we oftentimes say, well, for the rest of the schools, it's really not, especially the regional publics, the community colleges, of course, which are open enrollment, and less selective, less well-resourced private schools. But we focus a lot on that because a lot of our listeners are interested in tips. And so we try to scratch where you're itching. But what I don't think we think about enough is how competitive it is for the colleges. Their mindset is, you think you have it hard. We're going up against tens, hundreds of schools. And I'm not saying thousands, even the thousands of colleges, just because you rarely overlap with certain schools. We're going up against tens and hundreds of schools. Many times they have a bigger brand name. They have bigger budgets, whether that means they can give more need-based aid or merit-based aid. They have better facilities. They have a better location. They may have a better campus. They have a better sports program. They're a hot school. And it's incredibly difficult to compete. And the harder students here it is to get into college, the more they add more applications. So once we might have had a 1 in 5 shot, then a 1 in 10, now it's a 1 in 15, and many people apply to more than 15. We have a Herculean task ahead of us. So the one thing you better do to try to be competitive is to take a look at what are the natural advantages that we have based on our location. I'm sharing it here with you just because it can be one way to identify schools that are strong in areas of interest. So what I'm going to do is take, it's either 11 or 12, I estimated, I didn't count exactly, different programs, majors, and I'm just going to share with you some of the strong schools in these programs. And let's talk about one of the reasons why they're strong, their location. Let's start first with marine science. Now, what I'm not going to do is list every single strong program in marine science, but I'm going to list some of them, and I want you to see their natural advantage based on their location. Coastal Carolina in Conway, South Carolina. Guess what? It's on the coast. Of course they're going to be strong in marine science, marine biology. Dalhousie University in Halifax, right on the water. You know, I went there one time as a kid and I got stung by a jellyfish, so I'd never been back. College of Charleston, South Carolina. What is Charleston? Right by the water. Of course, we're going to take advantage of our location. And there's a bunch of really strong schools in Florida, like Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, and Florida Atlantic in Boca Raton. Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne. Hawaii Pacific. Once again, Honolulu, right on the water. Also in New England, Maine Maritime Academy, right on the water. Massachusetts Maritime Academy. And then you have Old Dominion in Norfolk, right on the water in the Chesapeake Bay area. Okay, there's other schools too, like the University of Maine, SUNY Maritime, University of Miami, Coral Gables, University of New Hampshire, Durham, UNC Wilmington. Lisa did a spotlight on them, right in Wilmington. Really strong marine sciences. University of Rhode Island and University of West Florida. Notice, those schools are on the water or close to the water, and they all say we better be strong in marine science. By the way, I interviewed the president of University of West Florida, and she highlighted this as one of their strong programs on this podcast because of our location. For you, I want you to think of this as well when you're thinking about building a list of schools. Let's go to another topic, music. School I just visited this summer, Belmont in Nashville. Middle Tennessee State, another school I visited this summer. Vanderbilt, another school I visited this summer. What do all three of those schools have in common? They're all in Music City, Nashville. We're in Nashville. Of course we're going to have strong music. And then even University of Memphis, which is not in Nashville, but it's in Tennessee. Like, we're close enough. Let's have a strong music program, and they do. And, of course, you're going to have your places like Curtis Institute of Music and Philly and Berklee College of Music. Of course, those are specialized music schools. They're going to be strong. But let me give you one more. Take a guess who's got one of the strongest jazz programs in the country. You guessed it, Loyola University in New Orleans. Of course, Jazz City. Of course, you're going to have strong music. Let's move on to another area. Once again, the purpose of this is so you can see one way to identify schools that are strong in your area of interest is to say, what region of the country is known for this? Doesn't work for everything, but it works for a lot of things. Let's look at international relations. What's the first place you think of when you think of IR? Of course, the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. So what are some of the strongest programs in the country in IR? American University, Georgetown University, Johns Hopkins, close to D.C., George Mason, Fairfax, Virginia, stone's throw away, Northern Virginia, right? They've got the top peace and conflict studies program there with the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter program that's been established there. And then other things in that metro area like Goucher in Baltimore is really, really strong. And GW, George Washington, all exceptionally strong programs. Now, it's really important you hear what I say. Many programs that are exceptional in all of the areas I'm talking about are not located in these locations. So what I don't want you to infer is that if you're not located in one of these locations, you're not strong. And I'm going to emphasize that over and over and over again because that could be a natural inference from this. And I don't want anybody to make that inference. For example, if we're talking about IR, places like Brandeis and BU and CMC, Claremont McKenna, Clark in Worcester, Mass, Dickinson, Carlisle, PA. These are all really, really strong programs. McAllister in St. Paul, Minnesota, Occidental in Los Angeles, to name a few. Those locations are not necessarily expressly known for IR, but they're also really, really strong. All right, let's look at another area, Wall Street jobs. And here we're talking about anything from, venture capital, private equity, investment banking, and, all of those kinds of jobs. It's a known fact those schools recruit from the most elite colleges in the country. So pretty much all your elite schools, whether they be selective liberal arts or national universities, they're really pipelines to Wall Street. If there's one place that's brand conscious when it comes to their hiring, it's Wall Street. So you can expect all across the country, the brand name schools are feeders to Wall Street. And they even go to the top Canadian schools. For example, Queen's and Kingston is a big feeder to Wall Street. And programs like Western, University of Toronto is also a favorite for Wall Street from Canada. The Ivy School, they do grab all of those schools that are elite. They just like really smart kids and really strong programs in econ and finance. However, based on Wall Street job placements, I'm going to tell you what 3 of the top 5 colleges are for Wall Street job placements with the major New York banks. NYU, Stern School, number 2. Cornell, Dyson, as well as economics, number 3. And then Columbia, number 5. Okay? 3 of the top 5 are in New York. Of course, the Wharton School is also in there. And guess what? There are other schools in New York State, Cornell, of course, not New York City, but it's New York State, that are also strong, like Colgate in Hamilton, New York, and Rutgers, which is New Jersey, the flagship. It pumps people to Wall Street. Location, location, location. That's what they say in real estate, right? And then a place like CUNY Hunter has a track record with Wall Street. So once again, natural advantage. All the big banks are here. Let's go there. Davidson, where my daughter graduated, was an absolute feeder right into Charlotte, which has become the second biggest banking city in the country. And a lot of people that Karis went to school with and students that I've sent to Davidson have ended up in the Charlotte banking world. All right, let's look at another area, petroleum engineering. I'm going to mention 7 schools that are really strong in petroleum engineering. Guess what? All 7 are in 2 states. You probably guessed it. Texas and Oklahoma. UT Austin, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, University of Houston. They all have strong petroleum engineering programs. And then so does the University of Oklahoma, the University of Tulsa, and Oklahoma State. Petroleum engineering, that's a place to be, right? If you want to do meteorology, Oklahoma. They've got the National Weather Center there. That's the place to be. It's so much stuff going on in that area with tornadoes. Environmental science. There's so many good schools in environmental science, and in so many instances, they're in states that are very environmentally conscious. So you have Amherst College, Massachusetts, very environmentally conscious state. Bates, not only is Maine environmentally conscious, look at the location. Carleton, Minnesota, very environmentally conscious, and also the location. Colby, also in Maine, strong environmental science program. So is Cornell and Dartmouth. All these are located in states and oftentimes in locations within state that's very outdoorsy. Hamilton College in New York, strong environmental science program. Middlebury, Vermont, strong school, out in the midst of nature, appreciation for the outdoors, very strong program. Pitzer College, California, very, very environmentally conscious state. It's one of their 4 pillars. St. Lawrence University, upstate New York, very strong school in the Albany area, very strong program in this area. And then most of the UCs are strong in environmental science. Berkeley and UCLA, San Diego, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, Davis, to name a few. Very environmentally conscious state. UNC Asheville, once again, Asheville is known for this and the appreciation for the outdoors. These outdoorsy schools that are in environmentally conscious states, they tend to have good programs. I wouldn't say North Carolina is as environmentally conscious as a Maine, as a Oregon, as a Washington. Speaking of Oregon, both Willamette and the University of Oregon, really strong programs. I have to tell you this story. One of my very best friends, and this really hurts me to say this, but he passed away a year and a half ago. It is just at age 55. Really, really, really still hard on me. His wife reached out to me to say Jean passed, but he was in Portland, and I visited him multiple times out there. He was getting his doctorate. And I couldn't believe it, how environmentally conscious that state was. I watched the local news, and there was a 7-minute section on the fish. And then there was like free busing to stop environmental pollution. So these schools that are located in these states that have strong commitment to the environment tend to have strong programs. A few more: University of Vermont, killer program; UMass Amherst, outstanding program; Williams College, once again, UMass Amherst, Williams College, Massachusetts, Vermont, very environmentally conscious states. All right, let me go to another area. Let's look at film. Well, when you think film, what would you think? You'd think Los Angeles, TV and film. And you would not be wrong, because if you look at Chapman in Orange County, or in Orange, California, or you look at LMU, Loyola Marymount, right in LA, or UCLA, or USC, they all have strong programs in TV and film. Now, once again, I don't want you to think those are the only places, because there's other places with strong programs in film. Emerson and Ithaca and Syracuse and NYU, to name a few. But once again, natural advantage of location, got to take advantage of it. It's too competitive. Let's look at another area, automotive engineering. When you think of automotive engineering, what do you think of? A lot of schools don't have automotive engineering. In fact, very few schools do. Most schools, you get a degree in mechanical, and then you can go into automotive. But very few schools actually have automotive engineering degrees. But there's one place where it is fairly common, and there's tons of automotive engineering prep. And that is the state of Michigan. Of course, you've got GM, you've got Ford, you've got Chrysler. And so it's a big debate in Michigan. University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan State in East Lansing, and then Michigan Tech. They all have phenomenal programs and great pipelines right into the job market. Kettering University. You say, what? What's Kettering? Small little Kettering, 3,000 students in Flint, Michigan, is a powerhouse. And on a student per pupil basis, they send as many people into automotive engineering as anybody. You might have known them before as the General Motors Institute, which was their old name. But they have management degrees as well in it. They offer degrees in management as well as engineering. And when another place, Clemson, you say Clemson, whoa, what does that have to do with Michigan? Well, a lot of people don't know this, but go all up the I-85 corridor and you see auto manufacturing plants everywhere. Clemson's been an engineering power for 100 years. And the Center for Automotive Research, the CUICAR, is at Clemson. So, of course, that's going to be on the list. And they also have a strong vehicle dynamics program. Let's say you're interested in Asian studies. Well, a lot of the strong programs are located in places that have a lot of Asian students, like Pacific University in Oregon and Portland State in Portland. And, of course, UCs like UC Berkeley. And, of course, a place like University of Hawaii, the flagship in Honolulu, Manoa, University of Oregon, University of Washington, UW in Seattle. These are all really strong Asian study programs located in places with large Asian populations. Let's turn our attention to equestrian studies. Well, a lot of people don't know this, but Pennsylvania's horse country. I know, I lived there for 14 years. And, you know, it was I remember when I first got to Westtown, and people would be like, you know, what do you do? I'm a rider. And I was like, you're a skateboard rider? You're a bike rider? No, I'm a rider. Duh. That's just the term. So it's not surprising that Delaware Valley University in Doylestown, a place that I used to work. In the mid-90s, I did sales for Fortune 500, two Fortune 500 companies, and Doylestown was part of my territory. Horse country. Not surprising. And then it shouldn't be surprising that women's colleges oftentimes have strong riding programs because it's a female-dominated sport. So a place like Hollins University in Roanoke's got a really strong program. Smith in Northampton, Sweetbriar in Sweetbriar, Virginia. You know, not surprising that they would have really strong programs. And a former women's college, University of Mary Washington, once again, history impacts the present. So none of those should be surprising. But when I say horses, what's the first state that comes to mind? Bingo! Kentucky Derby, Kentucky. So why is it not surprising that Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, has some of the strongest equestrian programs? Because they do, including Morehead State University, a school I haven't mentioned on this podcast in 6+ years, but they've got strong equestrian. Murray State in Murray, Kentucky's got a really strong program. And of course, both the University of Louisville in Louisville and the University of Kentucky, the flagship in Lexington. Let's look at another area, fashion design. You would expect that fashion design would be strong in the major cities because that's where the trends are, right? New York, LA, Miami, those are fashion capitals. So, of course, FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, is going to be strong when it comes to this list. And Otis College of Art and Design in LA is going to be strong. And Parsons School of Design in New York and Pratt Institute in Brooklyn is going to be strong. And even some other schools just outside of LA, like Santa Ana College and Santa Monica College. Those are really strong in fashion. But you also find other schools, like your schools that have just overall really strong arts programs, like VCU in Richmond and University of Cincinnati, and of course, the Art Institute of Chicago. Right here in Georgia, where I'm at, SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. Lisa did a spotlight on them. Very strong program. RISD, very strong program, in Providence. And that should not be surprising because of the strength of the program. Moore College of Art and Design, another one in Philly with a strong fashion design program. So friends, hopefully you enjoyed that kind of panoramic overview of some of the locations that have unique advantages and how the colleges say we've got to take advantage of our strength in our immediate area and have a strong program. Use that to our advantage because everybody has to have some advantage, some card to play. And why don't we take advantage of the natural location that we have? And I could have got on with another 50 to 100 programs, but I didn't want to bore you. But hopefully I shared enough to make the point. The point is, if you're a student and you know what you're interested in, why don't you ask yourself, is there a part of the country that's known for this? And there's a very good chance that you'll find colleges there that have strengths in those programs. But the second point is this. Don't think that just because a school is not located in that area that it's not good, because so many schools have tremendous resources and they have strengths and programs across the board. So don't use this to eliminate schools, but use it to maybe investigate some schools. And I think you'll find your own research to confirm what I shared with you, that when a school is located in an area that is renowned for something, the colleges in that area tend to have exceptionally strong programs in that area.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
All right, friends, now we're going to transition to this extremely exciting interview for me that Lisa did with Dr. Andrea Brenner. And in part one, Dr. Brenner gives her very unique career path, telling us what it was like to be a college professor for over 20 years. Then she talks to us about her book, How to College, and the 5 card decks she created and why she created them. She talks about her favorite exercise to help students get ready for college. Dr. Brenner talks about some of the life skills students should have before they go off to college. Andrea talks about the academic skills that students need before they leave home for college. Andrea talks about many ways in which the skill set students need for high school is different than the skill set they need to be ready for college. I really want you to listen to that part. I thought it was fascinating. She went through how the teaching, the structure, the setting of high school is so drastically different from college, and it can lead people to be ill-prepared for the college transition. Dr. Brenner gives some outstanding tips about what students and parents can do to prepare to adjusting to the freedom for college, and she shares one mistake that well-intentioned parents make so often, and it's very deleterious when it comes to preparing their students to transition to college. Listen and enjoy, and take notes.
Hi, this is Lisa, one of the co-hosts on Your College Bound Kid, and I'm very excited today to be talking to Dr. Andrea Brenner. She is the president of A.M. Brenner LLC and the founder of the Talking College Card brand. She's a speaker and college transition educator who brings 25 years of insider experience to her presentations for high school and college audiences. If that wasn't enough, Dr. Brenner is also the co author of How to College, What to Know Before You Go, a book that guides graduates through their transition to college. And she's also created these talking college card decks, which provide insider tips and discussion prompts for college bound students and their parents. So, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. So, you've been busy. Tell us about your career path and how you came to where you are now.
Sure, absolutely. So I have kind of an offbeat career path. I'm a sociologist by trade. I have a PhD in sociology, and I was a sociology professor for 20 years at American University in DC, where I live. And my area of interest was always the intersection of sociology and higher education, studying sociology of the first year student. So when it came to be that the university I was working for wanted to create a first year experience curriculum, I was the person to do the job. So I spent several years building a program from the ground up. And that program today, the American University Experience, is a mandatory course for all incoming students, which is really exciting to see what I started. And, it's taken many twists and turns. I left campus life in 2018. I had the opportunity to write a book with a dear colleague from American University. The book, How to College, was published by Macmillan, and it just took off, which has been just wonderful. And, one of the downsides of the pandemic, obviously, was the state of higher education and people trying to connect with colleges when they were doing college from home. And our book happened to sort of hit the sweet spot because there's so many online exercises that it did prep students for college, even if they were doing college from their bedrooms. And so that book enabled me to kind of go out and on the road. I speak with high schools, I speak with colleges. My favorite audiences to speak with are high school parents. And I talk about the transitions from high school to college and some of the challenges of those transitions. Question I got asked again is, tell me the discussions. What kind of things should we talk about before my kid heads off to college? And so that's where the Talking College card decks were born. I knew that I had the ability to get some of those prompts in card form and make a tactile reference for families. And so we've got 5 decks out at this point, all with a different focus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I think that, using the cards is a really great way to stimulate conversations. And it sort of, I'm not going to say it gamifies the experience, but a little bit. It kind of takes you out of the norm, makes it a little more fun. There's the element of surprise. So I just think that's a great idea to get families engaged in those discussions. Well, and this first question is kind of general, and I imagine you're going to break it down into different parts for us. So, how can high school students become prepared to succeed in college? What should they be looking at?
Right. So it is a very large question. And I would say there's a couple of answers that I would give. One would be to practice. So what are you practicing? Well, first, I think it's important to figure out what skills you're lacking or what skills you need to learn. And that's academic skills, I would say professional skills, and also life skills. So I would break it down into those 3 categories. And I'm often asked by families, well, how do I know what I don't know? How do I know what's necessary? And my favorite exercise that I do assign to families all the time is a 20-minute exercise to start. A parent and their young adult child, college-bound kid, maybe 10th, 11th, 12th grade, sits down with a pad of paper and a pen each. They set a clock for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and they each write down, the student writes down the list of things they think they need to learn before they go to college or skills they need to work on. And the parent or guardian writes down all of the things they believe that student needs to learn or work on. And then when that time is up, at some point, they revisit those lists and combine them together. It's surprising to see how many of the things are on both lists. Sometimes there's an elephant in the room. We don't talk about something that, we know our kid is really struggling with in some way. And so it's nice to see it on paper. There are also will be things on one list and not the other. And that is a great chance for a conversation. And then what I like to tell families to do the next time they sit down is after they combine those lists into one larger list, they really should make another column and figure out who is going to teach those skills. And ideally, it's not the parent in all situations. There's only so much our kids can learn from us, but there are lots of adults in life, right? Mentors, guidance counselors, teachers, aunts, uncles, older siblings. And so whatever those skills might be, and some of those skills can be taught, in a day. Some of them can be taught in an hour, and some of them are something that a student might need to work on all summer long. And so when I talk about sort of professional skills, those are things like leaving a professional voicemail, writing a professional email. Can the student make their own appointments? So those are things that, you can practice with haircuts or dentist appointments. So you're prepared for college. And those are, there's lots of places online. Obviously, in our book, we give examples, but many, many places online that'll teach you how to write a professional email. Life skills is another big one, right? So anything having to do with money, banking, healthcare, things to take care of yourself, mental health, physical health. Do you understand how health insurance works? Sometimes that can be
I don't.
overwhelming to a kid. But what does it mean? What is a copay? There's some basic language that students should head off to college with. So any of those, that come to be sort of those life skills that the student has not honed yet, or it hasn't learned yet. And then academic skills. Where is the child or the young adult behind?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things do they find challenging? And for most college-bound kids, I would say that's less the content area and more the study skills. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like, how do you feel like the college classes differ from high school classes, and what sort of different study skills would they require?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think they differ more than people realize. And I think a lot of first year students are surprised a couple of weeks into classes how different they are. So I go through a lot of this in my cards and in my book, but I'll just give you some examples. I think that one way they differ is that in high school, teachers send a lot of reminders. I know my son in particular would not have done as well as he did in high school had he not gotten those, don't forget this is due Thursday, or don't forget your chemistry test is on Friday. That doesn't really happen in college. Those reminders have to come internally because there's nobody writing on the board or sending an email reminding you things. And as a professor, that was always in a first year class. There were always students who showed up, and, they would be surprised or, wide eyes when other students would say, oh, God, that was really rough getting that in at midnight, sending that paper in electronically. And that student said, oh, we had something due. I never got a reminder. And again, they, relied on that. So I think that's something. Reminders are a big one. We also in high school, and I would say this is both public and private high schools across the country, there are so many tests and quizzes. There are so many grades. So if you're a parent and you heard your child say, well, I didn't do great on this test, but that's okay. I have 7 more assignments. I can bring up my grade in this marking period. That doesn't really happen in college. There are far fewer grades, and so each grade is weighted more heavily. Rarely are there opportunities for extra credit in the college classroom. So that's a big difference as well. I would also say that I hear from a lot of first-year students that they're surprised about the amount of reading. So in high school, you might be assigned, a chapter in a week, and in college, you might be assigned a book in a week. And the professor is making the assumption that the student knows how to manage their time well and get everything done, sort of outside of classroom time.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some big ones.
Yeah. So what could students do to adjust to those differences?
Well, I think some of it is just knowledge that this is what the reality is going to be. I think it's also really important if the student is still in high school, if this isn't the summer right before college, that they really well use a planner if that's not something that they have been doing. And there's no right or wrong kind of planner. I have parents say all the time, I like a paper planner. My kid likes an electronic planner. Some college students use both. It doesn't really matter, whatever works for your brain, but making sure that you know how to use a planner, knowing that you're going to be the one responsible for all those dates. If you're earlier in high school and you give yourself a good amount of time to practice, take a look at all the syllabi that you get in the first day or the first week of classes and actually schedule out those tests and quizzes and midterm exams. Put them on a calendar, maybe color code them so you can sort of be prepared for seeing a whole lot of stuff due on one page, which can be kind of overwhelming to students. I would also say that if a student is struggling with note-taking or reading skills, there's some wonderful free online programs that students can find and practice. There are wonderful exercises that students can do where they sit and they read for 30 minutes with their electronics in another room so that they're not, tempted to check social media or get texts or whatever. That's a hard thing to do for many students who are used to kind of always having technology on, next to them. So that's something that you can practice as well. And then another thing that I would say that students should be aware of are the irregular class times, right? So in high school, the majority of high school students in the US are in high school classes about 35 hours a week. They are in class pretty much all day, every day. And, that with extracurriculars and maybe a job or sports, no wonder why our high school kids are so exhausted. But in college, most students are between 12 and 15 hours of classroom time rather than 35 hours of classroom time, which doesn't mean that it does mean there's a lot more free time. It doesn't mean that there's less work. It just means the student needs to be very self-directed. So, the better prepared for the student to be self-directed and not rely on others, and the best. And I would say it's not just kids preparing, it's also what parents can do. And I do say to high school parents all the time, if you are the parent who notices the history paper in the printer and rushes it over to school because your kid forgot it, you need to stop doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Your student needs to understand what it feels like to forget, if the coach is going to be angry if you don't have your uniform, and we need to stop bailing our kids out. Now, I'm a believer that that's not, when it comes to health and safety, that's our role as parents.
No, of course not.
I would never, ever, suggest that. But it's such a disservice when we do too much as parents. We do too much for our kids. We're fixers. We do it really well. We do it way better than our kids. And then a lot of students head off to college and, mom or dad is not there to do the daily stuff for them. And they can really suffer, and their grades can really suffer.
Friends, this concludes the first part of Lisa's interview with Dr. Andrea Brenner. Hopefully you'll join us next week for part 2 of 4. Okay, friends, on Thursday's episode, Vince and I continue our conversation about Miami University, cutting programs amid financial challenges. We also return to the question, is it better to apply early action if your grades had a slight dip from fall of the junior year to spring of the junior year? And our question from a listener, Lisa will join me. We'll have a speak pipe question from Julie from California. And she has some questions for us about school profiles. And back by popular demand, as promised, Lee Coffin from Dartmouth is back. You may remember I said we did a 7-parter. I decided to break it up. 4 parts on tough questions about college admissions. And now he's back for the 3-parter on understanding Dartmouth College. And there'll be no college spotlight for the next 3 Thursdays because our interview is a spotlight. And friends, as I told you, I'm closing out with these quotes that I have found on this website about the personal statement. Some of them I like more than others. This one comes from Amy Gutman, the president of the University of Pennsylvania until 2022. And it simply says this: our admission officers are looking for something that is authentic and, check this word out, imperfect, and somebody who is thinking differently. I like this one. Our admission officers are looking for something that is authentic and imperfect, and somebody who is thinking differently. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stylianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.